Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome to the month of March. It is already the third month of the year. Remember the goals you set out for yourself at the beginning of the year? Are you still committed to achieving them like you were on January 1st? Remember, goals are like having your headlights on, but you have to take action to accomplish them. We are sharing in the month of March some great guests on the Charge Podcast. Our guests this month share their expertise on how to be a giver in your life, learn how to create revenue from e-commerce business, strategies to communicate with your clients, and why living into your passion is so important to living your best life. If you're feeling frustrated and stressed out with your professional and personal life, I know in each of these podcasts, the strategies that each guest shares can propel you to live a charged life in 2021. Chargers are committed to finding how each day they can make their life better by the willingness to learn, grow, and become the person they were meant to be. In my recently published book, Cultivate Positive Culture, 10 Actions to Faithful Living, I shared this quote: "Give yourself permission to charge each day to become the person you were meant to be." You've made a great choice in listening to this podcast. Remember, the podcast is named Charge after my mantra: create habits around real goals every day. Let's get recharged in this podcast to influence a positive culture so you can take simple positive actions each day. Are you ready? Welcome, Chargers. We're glad to have you back this week for another great guest. I love sharing different guests with you with different viewpoints because then you can decide what you want to take action on. And this week is no different. I've got Mark Shaiken. He's 41 years in the law. Then one day, no more law. Mark left the big firm corporate bankruptcy practice to pursue things about which he had a passion. Now he measures each day by what he gives and tries to make a difference in a small way. To do so, Mark teaches photography to returning veterans. He is the vice chair of Think 360 Arts for Learning, which brings art to inner city kids and the elderly. And he is on the finance and audit committee of Habitat for Humanity, Metro Denver. Mark's story into and eventually out of the law world is documented in his new book. And just like that, essays on a life before, during, and after law. Mark, that sounds like a great read. I'm going to have to check into it. I haven't got to read it yet, but share with us, if you would, Mark, a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me on the show. I had a pretty normal, I suppose, life. We did move a ton, but that aside, grew up in New York City, ended up in high school in New Haven, Connecticut. As I graduated from high school, I was accepted to go to college at Haverford College, which was by far and away the hardest college, the best college that I had applied to. And so off I went to outside Philadelphia, spent my first 3 years at Haverford doing what one does in a liberal arts school, trying things out. And came upon my senior year, I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. Something else that I think pervades the liberal arts world. And from there, I spent a good 38 years kicking the can, trying to figure out what I was going to do. Kind of went to law school as a compromise to give myself more time to figure out what to do. Never thought I'd be a lawyer. Never thought I'd be a courtroom person. That had its ups and downs, to be truthful. As I talk about in the book, if you go into something that you're not really passionate about, you end up spending an awful lot of your time negotiating for how much longer you're going to do this before you get out of it and do something else. And that's pretty much the story of my life. Disorganized negotiations with myself about one more day and that's it, one more week and that's it in the big law firm.
Yeah, and I can see how that changes, and we'll get into that, I'll dig into that a little bit to be able to share your story. But before we do, I always ask every guest this question. I have a mantra called CHARGE, create habits around real goals every day, kind of why the podcast is named what it is. What habit do you think's led to success in your life?
So my life really had adult life had three parts to it. Law school, the practice of law, and what I call in the book the afterlife. And my habits were different. Law school itself is habit forming. It provides you the necessary habits, whether you like it or not, by imposing on you close to lethal doses of reading and writing that's necessary over the 3 years. And with the amount of that they give you, that's your habit. You get up, you go to school, you come back, you read, you write, you go to bed, and hit the reset button and do it again.
You're right.
Practice of law, different. Practice of law, you're sort of introduced pretty quickly in a large law firm to something that is called the jealous mistress. And the actual quote is that the law is a jealous mistress, and it completely applicable for me and for the large law firm. And so for my habit and the law firm was the 38-year struggle to try to corral some portion of my life that was mine and wasn't the jealous mistress banging on the door saying, here, this is what you need to do. And I was better at it at different times. So I got better as I got older and more wise about how to balance that out. Balance is so important. So in the law practice, balance would be the habit. In the afterlife, I was very intentional about what I was going to hope to do when I finished practicing law last year. And the habit is me getting up every day and doing a self checkup. Did I do something good yesterday? Did I make somebody's life better in some small way? And we'll hopefully get into this, but the organizations in which I donate my time and I'm heavily involved in, that's my goal. How can I help in some small way? Because if everybody helped in a small way, it would be huge. And I'm not, Jimmy Carter in Habitat for Humanity, so I'm not the national spokesperson, but if I can help in a small way, a family in a house and offer stability, or a kid that needs something in an inner city to advance and hopefully get the breaks I got, and as an inner city kid to go to graduate from high school and go to college, then makes me smile. That's my measure. Okay. That's my habit.
Great. Well, I definitely want to get into that. But before we go there, you mentioned a little bit about this, and you kind of said a happenstance of a little bit of how you got into law, but you ended up being in it for 41 years. So really, how did you become an attorney or decide that was it? And then that you stayed in it for the 41 years, and do you feel it was a good fit for you?
I'll answer the last one first. I don't think it was a good fit for me. You spend an awful lot of time, not just as a lawyer, law is what I know, but you spend an awful lot of time as an adult trying to figure out if you're doing what you want to do, what you were sort of designed or destined to do. And if the answer to that question is not necessarily, then you end up spending an awful lot of time trying to figure out what else could I do. Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit of a loaded question, because as I came to understand, implicit in the question, what else could you do, is more of a statement. There really isn't anything else that you can do. You're doing what you know how to do. And for me, that was true. I was doing what I knew how to do. I was good at it. But it wasn't really, if I had a passion for it at some point, passion fizzled out. And the idea of stepping back from all of that and thinking not so much about getting out of the law, which pervaded thoughts at different midlife crises that I went through in my life, the many that I had, and start focusing more on not retiring from the law, but retiring to something else. Because I didn't really want to sit at home with a remote control and watch Oprah reruns. I wanted to be as busy as I was as an attorney, just not going to court, not having judges and clients and things like that, and partners. Once you sort of change your mindset, your focus of how can I help the world? What else can I do? Stop feeling sorry for yourself that you're in something you don't like. Start being proactive and find something you can do. Everything changed. and I became more intentional, more organized in the thinking, more able to eliminate pipe dreams. Okay, I'm not going to play lead guitar in the Bruce Springsteen E Street Band as much as I would love to get the call someday. I am a guitarist, but I'm not that good. And, stop focusing on those kinds of things. No, the New York Times isn't going to call me and hire me as their sports photographer to follow the Yankees around for 162 games. So, let's get out of the things that were childhood dreams that didn't happen, and let's get into the adult thing of how can I do things I want to do and help people.
Well, I think it's so important because, we're early in the 2021 and there's other people sitting there that are going to their job, job, instead of the thing that they're really passionate about. And I think you shared some tips there. Is there some other things that you would kind of suggest to someone that they're not really doing their passion right now, of how can they look forward to that, or really decide what that new calling is, or be able to, like you said, retire from to something else? Because I think the other thing is, my personal belief is, I think we've got the retirement the wrong way. Retirement isn't just getting to not go to work anymore. It's doing the things that you have that passion about.
Yeah, it's not a retirement in the sense of my grandfathers or my fathers even,
Right.
Both of whom retired and sat in front of the TV, waiting to die. And we all know that actually will happen at some point to all of us. That wasn't fulfilling. And there is a better way to go about it, especially as we live longer than our prior generations. And I kind of look at it as a next season or a next act in a play, rather than the end of the first play, hard stop, that's it. And for me, the planning out of what the next act would be was important. There are people, and this works for them, who, as they reach that point where they start having these thoughts, make a decision that they're not going to plan anything. They're going to stop what they're doing, take 2 months off, maybe not shave, maybe not get out of bed in their mind's eye, and then they'll figure out what to do. And I didn't want to do that. That didn't work for me. My mantra was, know what you're going to do and then jump in full bore and do it. And that worked for me. That worked well. I also got some advice and help. There are professionals, not psychologists, although they're out there too. But there are counselors, people that for a living help folks like me figure out what else they can do, rather than face that question, well, there's nothing else you can do, right? And what I learned is that the notion that there's only one thing you can do in life is so wrong for humans. Humans are incredibly resilient. There are many things they can do. The problem is identifying what they are and figuring out how to implement. And those are pretty lofty, difficult factors to deal with, but it can be done. And once it's done and you're doing it, it's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, is realizing that we are meant for more. And then we have the capability so much to be able to serve others. And that's one thing, as I went through your bio, I shared, you are now definitely doing that with the Think 360 Arts, what you're doing. You're teaching photography to veterans, just so many Habitat for Humanity. I mean, you're serving in different ways. Would you say, you said, you kind of said this in the bio, but what are you receiving from that? Because you're giving a lot of time, but I think you feel like you're receiving more than what you're giving of the time.
Yeah, I get way more out of this than I give. And that's why I tend to characterize the giving part here as small, because I'm just one person. I'm not famous. I'm not the spokesperson. I'm just one person who's out there trying to do things that will better the lives of people who need help. Be it a returning veteran who's got PTSD, and photography turns out is a wonderful way to sort of drown out the noise of PTSD, get a skill, and focus on something that's artsy. Think 360. I was one of the kids that got taught by an organization like Think 360. I went to a really rough inner city high school, and there was an art requirement there that I completely blew off because I'm colorblind, and there was absolutely no way I was going to go into any class and be outed for not being able to see color in the same way as everyone else. And the school brought in a not-for-profit organization like Think 360 that taught black and white photography. So that kind of killed my excuse that I wasn't going to go to an art class. And I went to the photography class and fell in love with the teacher, fell in love with the whole medium. And I was 15 at the time. And, okay, I'm 65 now. I'm still taking pictures in the sports genre and just loving it. And it gave me confidence. It gave me a purpose. It got me out of trouble. And all of that in the modern era can be translated into, well, what effect does giving art to a really young kid, 4, 5, 6 years old, but what does that do to the kid's life? And the Brookings Institute did a study last year, as they can do, and they're very data driven. So rather than anecdotal stories, the data shows that introducing kids to things like art increases dramatically the chances that they will graduate from high school, go to college, and then all the good things that happen when you take that path, as opposed to the path that I was probably on in high school before that changed. And Habitat is the same idea. Families move a ton, totally destabilizing. Kids can't make friends if they're in a different place every year because the lease is up and the family moves. If you put them into a home and give them home ownership, all of that changes. The family stays together statistically. The kids graduate from high school and go to college statistically. And in those small ways, the more people, the more kids that you can help do that, the better the world gets. It just does. And it's just a question of numbers. How many kids can we reach? How many families can we help? And it's one family at a time and one kid at a time. And that's fine. But when you see the smile on a kid's face who's been introduced to something artistic for the first time, it makes the day, it makes the week, it makes the month. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about really the power of one. Which
Exactly.
you really decided from yourself, and I won't steal that. Where I heard that the first time was actually Kurt Warner. He was played in the NFL, quarterback for the St. Louis Rams. I was a fan of him because I'm in Missouri, and I went to games and saw him play. And one time I saw him speak, and he talked about the power of one, that if we decide to make a difference to someone, then that can make a difference, becomes that ripple effect that we all know. Is it really allows it to ripple. And that's what you're doing now, is you're making that ripple effect, sharing some of the talents, some of the passions that you have, and that's making that ripple effect. And when we do that, we make our, community stronger. We make the next generations, as you spoke about, all that becomes better in each one of those areas. So I really congratulate you on finding those passions, because I think that's the thing, is we have more inside of us. And that's the thing I'd want to say to the Chargers out here is, you may say, well, I've got a full-time job and, I've got kids. What is the one thing you could do? One thing that you could do in your community, maybe that would make a difference, because there's plenty of nonprofits out there that need the support and help. With last year, and still we're going through the COVID challenge, you can make that difference in others. And what would you share with the audience members, Mark, to really be able to kind of tell them, take that step?
Yeah, it's something that, Steve Jobs said that I wish I had paid more attention to as he was saying it. But I always remembered it, and I'm going to paraphrase and probably add a little Queens, New York to this. But what he said was, if you ain't got the passion, it ain't going to work. And that's an important thing for humans. And if a person finds something that they're passionate about, and there are no, as you said, there's no end of not-for-profits that need help and need people to donate even just an hour. An hour will get the same thank you very much as 10 hours will from any not-for-profit. If you can find that thing that you're passionate about, be it in the arts, be it in education, be it in animal shelters, be it in dealing with the elderly, and so on and so forth, you'll feel better. You will. even if you feel overwhelmed about how you will find that hour to donate, you'll still feel better when you do find the hour. And maybe the hour turns into 2, and maybe the 2 turns into 4.
Yeah. And I think that's the real key. I've been very fortunate. I've been very active with Special Olympics Missouri and since 1994. And just recently went off as the board chair for 2 years and still on the board of directors. But that became a passion for me, and it's a purpose, and it's one that I've carried through, and I plan on continuing because I just love with the athletes. To be quite honest, everybody says, oh, you give so much time to that. Well, the thing is, they make me feel so good. It allows me to see a different view of life, a different view, because all the athletes, or the majority of them, they take life as it comes, where I'll be honest, I get a little too serious too much. And when I'm around the athletes, they remind me, take life as it comes, enjoy the moments, because those moments come and go.
For sure.
Well, great. I love sharing this, and I really appreciate that, because I think it's a good time being early in 2021, because we have other listeners that are thinking that same thing. And it's not about leaving your job. It's about finding what you're passionate about. And you can do that on a volunteer type basis, but start exploring that. If you are getting close to that retirement age, instead of retiring and just getting tired, instead do some things that you love to do, and how you help and serve others. But one of the things I wanted to really talk about a little bit, because you wrote the book, and just like that. So I'm curious, what was behind your thought, and what was behind kind of your passion to be able to create the book?
Well, the title, and just like that, refers to what happened the moment that I left the law firm for the last day. I'm here in Denver. My firm is right downtown. And, I packed up my box, hugged my secretary, went down the elevator for the 24 flight ride down for the last time, and walked out. And just like that, I wasn't going to be practicing lawyer anymore. Now, I did have some moments as I walked with my box to get home. And the moment was, I was wondering if the law firm's version of the U.S. Marshals was going to occur, and if they were going to come get me and drag me back to the firm because I had escaped without permission. That didn't happen, thankfully. But my idea in naming the book just like that was to focus on how sudden it was, a lawyer one day and frankly not a lawyer the next, and how suddenly then I was able to start to do the things that in the amounts and spend the amount of time I wanted to doing the things that I had planned to do. That second part didn't quite happen just like that. It turns out there was an intermediate step of euphoria, which I hadn't planned on, not an emotion that most lawyers go through in their career. And it's a very interesting emotion I discovered. It sort of overwhelms the plan for a brief period of time. And rather than getting onto the business of doing the things that I wanted to do, one of which was to write the book, euphoria kind of kicked in. And I had this mindset every morning when I got up, well, I could probably do that tomorrow. I'm just feeling way too good. So I don't know exactly what chemical is released in the brain when euphoria kicks in, but it's something to watch for if you've been in a career for a long time and looking for a change. And it does pass, thankfully, because it's not a great way to go through life the rest of the way. And once that happened, then just like that, I was able to start to do the things I wanted to do, which did include writing the book and be I was pretty regimented in the writing. I would book appointments with myself for blocks of time where even if nothing was happening, I would still sit there and write. I wasn't somebody that and there are writers like this. I wasn't somebody who was going to wake up at 2 a.m. inspired and then sit down and start to write the next chapter. And that worked for me. And I'm writing my next book now, and it is the method I'm using. So I just find structure to be useful for me.
Yeah. And most writers, you have to have that structure, because so many people say, oh, this book just came to me. You still have to have the structure to be able to write it down. I know for myself, I told my staff I had a business that I sold in 2012. And when I kind of did a celebration party, when I sold that business with them, I told them I was going to write a book. Well, 2013, nothing happened. 2014, nothing happened. And late 2015, I finally started on it, and I published it in 2016. Because what happens is, unless you have some sort of system to make yourself right, you're not going to, because of course there's something else that you can put in that place.
Exactly. No, it is something that at least for me required a lot of consistency, and I actually enjoyed that. I enjoyed the writing. I didn't find it to be a chore, and the whole publishing process of getting edited and then picking a cover and all of those things were things I had no idea. I was a neophyte for all of that, but I know now, and I'm having the same sort of reaction to the next book that I'm writing now, and that is I'm very much enjoying it. So,
Great. Well, we appreciate you sharing your passions with us and what you've came up with. And one thing that came to mind as you were kind of explaining that, so often in life we play, I tell this at the audiences and when I coach some, we play roles. And, you had a role as an attorney, we have all these different roles that we play, but identity is who we are. And, you're really allowing that to come out now. And I would tell my audience as you're kind of thinking about, what is your identity? What do you want that to be? You have roles. You may be a spouse. You may be have son and daughter, all those type of things that's there. But what do you want that identity to be? Because when we identify who we want to be, then we can put those passions to it. And that's what Mark is sharing with us now, as being an author. He's sharing that passion he has, the things that he's done in the nonprofit world, sharing those passions that's available. And that's available to all of us. That's the thing I want them to realize is, you and I are having this conversation, but really we're speaking to somebody that needed to hear this today. And that becomes the real key.
That's so true, because I remember I was at a cocktail party in Kansas City at some point before I really got serious about this process. And somebody who I'd known for a long time asked me, well, who are you? And I said, I'm a lawyer. He goes, no, that's what you are. I'm asking, who are you?
Yeah.
And it's not even a subtle difference, but it's not a mindset that I found that I had been pursuing. I knew I was a lawyer, or you could be a doctor or an engineer or a million other things. And when somebody asks you, who are you? Oftentimes people respond by saying, well, this is what I do. Mm-hmm. And that's not really who you are. And who you are is a much more complicated thought process.
Well, we're going to kind of leave them right there because I want them to think about it with this podcast. We have more to cover. We got the recharge round to go, but I want them to think about, who are you? So Chargers, we're asking you that question. That'd be a great question to journal on, be able to write down and really give yourself some time to think about that. Who are you? Not, what your role is, but who truly are you? And I'll kind of leave it there. Mark, some great information. I truly appreciate you sharing it because I think it's a great time for people to really give some thought to what they want 2021 to be and then down the road. 2022 will be here, just like we all know. It goes very fast. So what do you want that to be for your life? But before we go there, Mark, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you some questions. I call it my recharge round. And I've got 6 quick questions for you there. First one is, how do you believe your mindset affects your daily living?
I think it's huge. Mindset is another thing that can be intentional. So are you going to let your environment, your place, your station in life govern you, or are you going to take control of your station in life? And that's all about mindset. Are you going to negotiate? I would not recommend this. It wasn't good for me. You're going to spend 30 years negotiating with yourself that would be the last trial that you're ever going to do, or the last partners meeting you're ever going to go to. Not a good mindset. A better mindset is self-assessment. Who am I? What can I do? What do I like? What do I not like? Why don't I like it? And when I stopped thinking so often about how the practice of law was affecting me, it actually was a better way to go through life than the daily negotiation.
Great. What do you do daily to bring energy into your life?
I get up every day and I have lots of things to do for the organizations. One amazing thing about not-for-profits is they don't have any limit on how much of your time they're willing to accept. And luckily for me, I have a lot of time to give them and they're happy to take it. So I could draw my energy daily from just knowing that I'm going to get up today and help Think 360 deliver art to kids. Or during COVID, for example, how the heck are we going to do that when we can't go into the schools anymore? Can we develop a TV channel on YouTube to deliver arts to kids remotely. And then for a lot of the kids, how do we get them laptops? And how do we get them internet? So really big issues that we never had to think about before COVID struck. And that provides me a ton of energy every day.
Well, thank you for that. That's excellent. Share the number one connection or relationship that's made the biggest impact on your life.
My wife, Lauren. That's an easy one.
Okay.
I don't know how she stayed with me through all 41 years of this. she should get some kind
She's
of
a
medal for
special
that.
lady. I've got one of those too.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a reason we're together, that we match up for a reason, right? What advice has influenced you the most in your life?
I didn't get a ton of advice about the whole way I was feeling about the practice of law, including not from my wife, Lauren. I think she did a really good job of sort of staying out of the way of becoming an advisor. My most influential lawyer who I ever worked for was the bankruptcy judge that I worked for when I got out of law school. And I did share with him some of the things that I was feeling. And he told me one time over lunch that the practice, this is pretty close to a quote, the practice of law isn't all it's cracked up to be. I should have listened or explored that with him a lot more. He was being wise and thoughtful as he is. And I was being impetuous and dismissive and did not accept that advice to give it consideration. But I think that would have been something that it would have been helpful for me to give a little bit more thought to.
Okay. Recommend your favorite book and why you like it.
There's when I got serious about the whole career pivot, I started reading books, which is what I do when I don't know a particular topic. And I read a bunch and they were all good, but none of them really connected with me. And then I was a little despondent that I hadn't found the book. And ultimately, though, I did. And the book was called Your Next Season. And it was the only one of these career pivot books that I read that struck a chord with me. And it was more scientific. Your Next Season was written by the founder of a company called My Next Season. And there's two founders. One is a former executive at Bank of America, and the other is a psychologist. So it's a much more scientific approach, much more of a discussion about why do people feel this way? Why do people feel there's only one thing they can do? Who told them that? And those kinds of things. And it's not a long book, but it was by far the most impactful of the things I had read about the particular station in life I found myself in.
Super. We'll have that in show notes. So if anyone's driving or exercising right now and want to take a look at that, we'll have that in show notes so you can easily access it. Well, you've almost made it through the recharge round, Mark. The last question for you is, in one sentence or less, what legacy do you want to leave the world?
We can all change things in a small way, and that's the goal. And if we all do, what a great world it would be.
Yeah. Oh, so true. And boy, just a small way of you saying yes to being on the Charge podcast for someone, like I said earlier, they listen to this and it really made an impact to them. And really the work you're doing in the nonprofits, you're creating that ripple effect and being able to share a message that you're sharing, that there are other seasons for us, no matter what stage of life you're in, because let's be honest, when we look back at our 20s, that was a season. The 30s and 40s and, when you're in retirement, those are all seasons of life. What can we do and what changes can we make? Mark, I can't thank you enough for being on the Charge podcast.
Well, thanks so much, Gary. It's been a lot of fun.
Share with them if they'd like to connect with you or check out your book, where they could go to get that and be able to reach out to you.
The best place would be my author's webpage, which is markshakenauthor.com. On that page, you can connect with me by email. You can download a free chapter from the book, which were my 10 rules that I used, not necessarily the 10 rules that everyone would use, but the 10 things that I've learned through this process. And then you can also link through to Amazon if you're interested in the book itself.
Excellent. Well, Mark, we can't thank you enough for joining the Charge podcast. Chargers, I hope you found some value out of this. Now, it's great to hear information, but I'm going to go back to what I go to every time. The key is, what action are you going to take? I'm going to give you one that you should consider. I thought this was an excellent Mark shared. Who are you? Not what you do, but who are you? Define that for yourself. And if you define that, that's going to allow you to take action and decide what you want to do the rest of this year. Make it a great day. We'll see you back here next week.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.